Hello, listeners. I am so excited to bring you today's interview. I have a guest on the show that talks about all the things that we need to learn and know and practice to live a life we love. If you are someone who sometimes feels like they could be labeled as a perfectionist, or maybe sometimes feels burnt out, or sometimes, feels stressed like all of us. Or guilt or shame, or like we're not doing enough, or we're not good enough, a good enough mom, a good enough wife, a good enough woman, like all of that, this episode is for you. Listen in. Dr. Ann Welsh is on the show. She is a clinical psychologist, an executive coach, and consultant. Dr. Welsh began her career at Harvard before opening her own practice with a focus on supporting women in all their roles at work and at home. She is a mother of four and draws on her experience, her research career, and her 15 years in practice to help women feel less alone, more connected to themselves, their values, and more empowered to make their choices. All right. And hello, Anne, and welcome to the Love Your Life show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I have really been looking forward to talking with you and diving into your work on perfectionism and burnout. It is it is just something that comes up for so many of my listeners and me, no matter what stage of life we're in, whether, we have kids at home or whether we don't have kids, or whether, it's sort of this just phenomenon that I find myself in over and over again. And I just was really interested in having you on the show and supporting all of us. So I guess I would love to hear sort of, how do we get into this stressed, overworked, juggling place in the first place? Like, how does this even happen? Because this is not my intent. I don't have a goal that's like, I want to be overwhelmed this month.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a million and two ways that we get there, but predominantly, I think it probably comes from a good place in the end. And that's why it's so hard, right? It comes from a place of either wanting to please others or, how we were socialized, maybe to be all things to all people. I think we look at different models of what we are supposed to be, and don't often recognize or realize how unrealistic those are. And so we're kind of grasping for them, not realizing that like that's an impossible thing. An example I was using with someone the other day is, we can look at a magazine at this point and I can know that the model is, had hair done and makeup done and then is airbrushed. Like I can know all of that. That's actually true of pretty much everything we see in the world, right? Of all
Really?
people, we see a snippet, we see a version, we see a presented version. And the reality is, none of us are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't realize that we think it's only us. It's that we are the only ones that are flawed. And so we better get ourselves up to everybody else's standards, up to matching everything.
Yes. Yes. And then tie in how, like, we see that and we want to be that, but then we also have sort of this programming that you sort of touched on in that, like, in order for us to be valuable or worthy, we better be that. Like, it's not just sort of us, like with a new, like, oh, I think I'm going to organize my house. It's like, if your house isn't organized, you are, like worthless, or, whatever our brain is telling us.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Really
Right?
not helpful.
It's a version of the guilt and shame thing, right? So guilt is when we feel bad that we had a behavior that maybe isn't aligned or we don't feel very good about, whereas shame is kind of ballooning that behavior into our whole selves. So if I, lose it with my kids and yell at them, I could either say, I'm a good mom who had a hard time and I'm not proud of that moment, or I could say, I'm a bad mom, right? That second is the big shame response. But I think we do that all the time, right? Like you said, my house is a mess. I'm a horrible housekeeper. No one should ever see my house because it's a disaster, right? We kind of make it into our whole selves rather than recognizing this is just one piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you think that comes from, or why do you think we're doing this?
I think for women in particular, there's a lot of socialization around being good,
Mm.
um, for it from a pretty early age, to follow the rules. Women also have somewhat of a genetic tendency to be more worriers, to get concerned about things in the face of stress rather than warriors, right? To fight it off.
Yeah.
So I think there's this also, it kind of mixes this predisposition along with the socialization so that we tend to kind of fret about things and try to make them perfect. Try to put on a good show, try to please everybody. And essentially that's what we're being told to do the whole of our lives.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I know that's sort of me, and I still have to, I'm 52 now, and one of my practices is to sort of every day draw like this, it's an imaginary, but it's an enough line. Like, what is enough for today, Susie? Like, okay, if you do these two things, that's enough. Like, you don't need to do the 412 things. These two are enough. That can be really helpful for me. Well, I've heard you say that we're sort of playing a rigged game from the beginning. And could you speak a little more about what you mean about that?
Yeah, well, I think this is exactly what we're talking about here, right? That we can't win. There, essentially to your point of enoughness, it's never going to be enough. There will always be somebody else that is more successful than you, that is smarter than you, that is whatever more than you. Um, and I started playing with this idea of the ambitious identity paradox, this idea that we're reaching for things just because they're the next step on the ladder, or the thing we think we're supposed to want, the thing we think that is going to make us happy or feel fulfilled or feel like we're finally enough. And in reality, the more we reach for these external things, these shoulds, the farther and farther we're getting from what we actually want, from the things that will actually make us feel fulfilled, that will actually make us happy. And we get kind of stuck, right? Because we don't know how to stop.
Oh, for sure. It's that like, I'll be happy when. That is,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's almost what our whole culture is built on, this like, oh, if you get the new jeans, you'll be happy. And then, if you go to college, then you'll be happy. Or if you get the new countertop, you'll be happy. And then you get to a certain point where you're like, wait a minute, this isn't working. Or maybe we need more and more and more. And then we're stuck in this pool of clutter, wondering why we feel so empty inside.
Yeah, and I think it happens with stuff and with like achievements. I think one of the really common things I hear from women in my office is this sense of, I got I got this promotion, I got this new job, I had kids, I got, I accessed this next level, if you will, and because I thought it was going to be the thing that would finally make me happy, and I'm either miserable, I'm overwhelmed, I feel like I'm failing, right? It didn't fix anything. And now what?
Yeah.
Reach for the next, if I made it to manager, now do I have to go for CEO, and then I'll be happy? And I think what brings people into my office is usually this sense of, I know that's not the answer, but I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you help them? How would you like, what would a beginner step be if a listener is feeling very aligned with what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I think the first step is to just start challenging some of those shoulds, right? And asking yourself, where did I get these messages? I know we kind of talked, generally about society and socialization, but was there a parent that modeled some of this for me, or a grandparent or a teacher? Is there social media I'm consuming that's modeling some of this for me? Are there thoughts I have about what makes a good woman, or have I seen the opposite? Am I, essentially overcorrecting where, I don't know, my mom stayed home and she was unhappy, so I decided I needed to pursue a career full force to avoid that, right? Because once we start to get a sense of our own narratives and like why these shoulds are showing up, it becomes a little easier to recognize and externalize those voices, right? To separate those other voices from what our own kind of inner knowing is. Then once we've started to challenge it, we get to start asking ourselves, okay, what's underneath all of this? Where's that self? Where's that voice? It's in there. We may have dealt with it over the years, right? Or kind of turned a blind eye to it. And so you start tuning in, what do I want? What are my values? And then you can start making choices that are aligned with that. And those feel a lot better usually.
Yes. Yes. I love how you mentioned values, because that really is, I find that's the key when I'm working with people too is sort of looking at their schedule and seeing, are there things there that are aligning with their values, or are there things there that are someone else's values that are put on your schedule that can really lead to quite the empty feeling, which is fascinating. So you spoke of some of the struggles that women have, that you hear women talk about in your office. What are some other, like, so we have this importance of knowing ourselves and our values. And then I guess I was trying to think of, like, so then how do we move into aligning with our values, not doing everything, especially if we've been taught that to do everything means that we're lovable and worthy and all of that. How do we then start to move in and decide, like, almost like which ball to drop? Like, we're juggling all these balls, like which one do we drop? Like, are there any that we can drop?
Yeah, so I always like to kind of remind folks that there are glass balls and rubber balls. We are juggling a bunch, and some of them are glass. And those are maybe, they're going to differ person to person. Maybe they are my kids, or they're my health, or they're my aging parents that I'm caring for, or some piece at work that feels vital, right? These are the ones that you hold on to pretty tightly. And if you have to put them down, you kind of give them to someone else to steward for a time, right? You make sure there's someone else kind of holding them.
That. Yeah.
So if I travel for work, I'm handing that ball off to my husband for the kids, or to a babysitter, because I trust them. I know that they're going to do a good job, right? The rest of them, most of the stuff that we stress about is actually those rubber balls. And if you drop them, they're going to be fine. If you intentionally put them down, they don't need another person to store them, right? Those things like the house being cleaned, the laundry, right? But also some of the work tasks that we take on. Some of them are busy work. Some of them are things that are not that important. And I'm not saying you give up those tasks forever. I'm advocating that if sometimes they slip, if sometimes you drop them, if sometimes you put them down, everything's going to be okay. They're going to be right there for you to pick up again when you're ready. Because stuff is going to come at you. Extra balls are going to get thrown your way that you're going to have to temporarily juggle, or those last ones are maybe going to get real heavy because something bad is going on or extra stressful. And when that happens, if you're able to recognize, I can put these extra ones down, I can kind of let them just fall and roll away and still go out. Then you're not yourself for it, which to the stress.
Yeah. Well, one thing that you're speaking of that I know I do now, but I didn't so much in the past, is that we need an opportunity to reflect on the life we're living. Like, I used to, and still can get caught in this, so I'm not trying to be this like holier than thou person then, but I used to be very much like a human robot. Like, my head was down and I was like, do the laundry, clean the house, do the work task, and just go, 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 go. And then at the end of the day, be like, okay, I'm breathing. Versus what you're speaking to is this like pause and looking at, are the things I'm doing, certainly if they're work tasks, is there any return on this? Like, what is the point of me, me as a coach? Like, what's the point of me posting every day on social media? Like, am I actually getting more podcast listeners, or is it just, sort of a waste of time? Or is it connecting with you? Whatever, like looking at that, but sort of lifting our head up off out of the like, it's almost like the Matrix. Like, we're in it and we're just racing and coming up and being like, well, wait, what? Like, I'm telling myself I need to, do the laundry every day. Do I? Or is there someone else in my house who maybe could do it? Or, yeah, how do you start people with that? With sort of that like awareness, or looking, or like, scratch, okay, halt.
I think that the starting place is to recognize that it doesn't have to be a big step, right? I mean, great. If you want to take an hour a day to do this, wonderful. If you have to take a bunch of time, certainly getting coaching is a great way to kind of carve out intentionally, but it could be as short as 5 minutes a day, right? That kind of mindful presence is a muscle that we can build, and even as little as 3 minutes a day, there's good data that suggests that actually changes brain activity with mindfulness, right? And so it's the same thing here. If you can take 3 minutes a day to carve out for yourself to begin checking in with what do I want
Mm.
or what do I need, that's a practice that will build on itself. And the
Mm.
more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more you're able to access that inner voice that will, those answers will come to you more quickly. And so
Yeah,
even,
I love that. Well,
oh,
and I just want to highlight two things to the listeners that you just said. Like one, that coaching could be a container where you do this, like where you have sort of an hour guaranteed where you're going to reflect on like, okay, what do we do with our life? I know sometimes in my sessions, people are like, I can't believe that we talked about the dishes for half an hour. I'm like, and that is like that half hour is going to multiply into like 300 hours of ease for you. You know, it's this like that stopping for that moment. Also, to your point, the 3 minutes, that could be just in the morning, pausing 3 minutes. What do I need? What do I want? Looking at the day and moving into your day with intention is going to feel a whole lot better than moving into your day just sort of that robotic pants on fire place. which then I like to couple that sort of morning practice with an evening practice of like reflection on, in a kind way, like, okay, so how did today go? Like you started today with this intention that you were going to, you know, do the laundry and maybe call your friend, and you ended the day and you didn't do any of the laundry and you got sidetracked, you know, like let's look at what's going on there. So I like sort of those bookends, and to your point that it can be so simple. It can be quite small. I guess another thing that I like using for the end is reinforcing that enough for me, that if, because usually by the end of the day I've added or I've become aware of 400 other things that I need to do. And if I'm like, yeah, but Susie, you did the two things at the beginning of the day, like sort of returning our brain, because there will always be something else. So you said, like, we can always do something else, but that, like, allowing ourselves to give ourselves that praise, not looking externally for it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's the only reward for finishing your to-do list is getting another to-do list, right? As
Sure.
humans in the world in which we live, there's never an end to it. And so we have to just be okay with that, right? You've got to learn to tolerate that or you'll drive yourself crazy. So to your point, if my goals at the beginning of the day are to get these three things done, and I've even really been intentional about how I'm going to do that, and that these feel like really reasonable goals, it's very understandable that my day could go sideways, right? Unexpected things come up, or something else I remember that I'd forgotten to do actually takes priority. And then I get to the end of the day and haven't done those three things.
Mm.
That's okay, right? That's where self compassion comes in. And we say, you're a good person who was trying to do a lot. Things came up that you didn't expect, and you were able to manage those. Good
Mm.
job. You can get to
Yeah.
these things tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is, I love what you're saying, and it's so deep, like this self-compassion for ourselves at the end of the day when other things are coming up, whether we did it or not, but also that, you know, whether listeners have family at home or whatever, it's just sort of trying to stay in our mindful, non-reactionary place. If things did happen, like say our kid came home and had a fit for 2 hours about a bio test that they passed, just sort of that memory that like these moments will pass. Like we will have time next Tuesday to do whatever email we wanted to write, or that's helpful for me, sort of calming my nervous system, because I can just get all like, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on. And yet, you know, these are just moments in time that will pass, and a season maybe where things are full and we have lots going on. Do you see that happening, or how do you help people with that?
Well, no, I think the seasonality is such an important part of it because, you know, I talk with a lot of folks about balance and this idea that balance is not a static state. It's like a constant adjustment of yourself in space, right? If you think about walking on a tightrope or watching someone do it, they're not kind of locked up. They are fluid and adjusting as it kind of in response to the tightrope, right? And that's where we want to be. And so there has to be this understanding that a breeze could come up. There's maybe a rogue wave, right? And it kind of tips us and we wobble and maybe we even fall down completely. And then we get back up and we kind of find the balance again. And there are going to be seasons, which could be a week or a month or even a year, where we're leaning far in one direction because we have to, right? Whether that's, again, caretaking roles for our parents or our children or a friend. And then there may be seasons where, yeah, work's asking a lot of us and we are kind of leaning and tipping in that direction. And the overall process is what matters, right? It's not, I think we can get very easily lost in a moment, as you said, right? And I've totally been in that position, right? My kid comes home, oh my God, I have this huge project. I didn't, my teacher's so mean and I didn't know it was due. And my reaction at first might be like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so I've got to regulate that internally of, okay, we're going to make time for this so that I can help them figure out what they need to do. But I think that the reaction of this is so hard and it's going to be this hard forever and I'm never going to feel better is a really human response.
For sure.
It's hard to get that perspective of this is going to feel really hard right now and then it's going to be over.
Yeah, it's going to feel really hard right now if someone's struggling with something, or like it just feels really hard in my nervous system. And just remembering, that's where meditation has helped to me, like sort of slowing it down so I can take a breath before I'm like, "No, I don't have time." That piece of it. But what I also like, and I guess age gives us this, because we can sort of look back and be like, oh, that did go fast, even though in the moment it's feeling intense. But this, idea that these moments, like our kids being home, I had 5 sons, so the house would be messy, there'd be smelly cleats, but this idea that, like, okay, maybe I see that picture in the magazine of the organized bins and the organized, and I could do that in 5 years. But right now, do I want to argue with my kids every single moment to, I don't know, put some weird odor thing in their shoes? No, I don't. So this shall pass. Or their room, yeah, their room is a mess. Let me close the door. It's not worth, my connection with my son. At some point, I bet I could make that room into a guest room, and that's down the road. I really appreciate that sort of seasonality of that this will pass, and sort of what will I focus on. I guess this comes back to your work on intention and mindfulness again, because if we can be mindful and even say to ourselves, like, yeah, this is hard right now. It's hard to see the clutter or the disarray, and this is not going to last forever. We have, pros and cons of lives.
Yeah. Well, I think that's that both and, right? It is hard and maybe I'm going to miss it. And it's hard and it's the right choice for me right now. Right. I mean, I think I'm in the same boat, obviously my kids are younger, but we've got 6 people living in 1,600 square feet. It's a tight fit and it's always kind of messy. It's going to always be kind of messy until these move out. There's no, if I were that, I'd be stressed all the time. So I just embrace it and kind of embrace an attitude of, if this bothers someone, then maybe they're not someone that needs to be in my house. Right.
Right.
Actually, and I can hold that and know that my preference would be for it not to look this way. And I'm okay with it being like this for now.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to say to myself, like, this is a house a family lives in, just but again, it gets back to this perfectionist, us thinking that it has to be a certain way, or everyone else's houses look that way. And it really doesn't. Maybe some people's houses do look that way, and they're choosing, again, it's values and priority. Maybe one of their values is clean, minimal space, and they are not prioritizing, as I was, sort of the relationship with my kids. And it's like, all values are fine. There's no judgment call, but it's like, we're going to see, it's all that intentionality in how we're going to feel.
Yeah. And I think when you know your values, right, and you can name them, then making those choices does get easier, and setting boundaries and saying no, right? You can move from a feeling of kind of constant guilt and questioning of, am I doing the thing, or I must be doing the wrong thing, because most decisions, someone out in the world is going to argue the exact opposite, right?
For sure.
And you come to a place of, instead of, I feel guilty that I have a dirty house, or I feel guilty that I missed my kid's soccer game for work, you can say, I'm making the choice to have a kind of messy house because I don't want to fight with my kids over it. Or I'm making the choice to go to this work function rather than the soccer game because this work function is really important to me and it makes me feel like an adult. And there will be other soccer games, right? That I'm choosing this for a reason.
Yeah, I need to, like, push a pause right there for all listeners to really pay attention to what she just did. She changed her words, or, what we talk about, her thoughts, instead of like, oh, I feel bad because I'm not at the work meeting, or I'm not. and change them to I'm making a choice to, and how different that can feel in our system. Like if we're thinking like, oh, I'm a bad mom for not doing this versus, oh, I'm choosing to prioritize this work event right now. And I will, choose to sit and read with my kids for 7 minutes tonight. That's going to
Right.
feel better than like, oh, I have to do this and I'm a bad mom and all of that. So looking at the thoughts that we are thinking and the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves. I'm always going to argue for telling ourselves a good story about ourselves. Like, let's be supportive.
Yeah, because all of us have good intention, right? Underneath it all, nobody's making choices like to hurt others. Um, right. And so I think if we can, and we usually can give the people we love the benefit of the doubt in that,
Yeah.
and it's harder when it's ourselves.
For sure. Yeah, I would love to pivot just a little because I think you have a background in fair play and yes. And
Yeah, I'm a fair play facilitator.
okay, and people may not have any clue what that is, but I think that that helps a lot and speaks to burnout also around a house. Could you explain a little about what even a fair play facilitator is and how you see that helping people, women, in their houses?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole separate show
Right,
on fair
I know. I just
but, the brief version is this a system that was developed by Eve Rodsky, where she took kind of corporate concepts for how to divide labor and moved them from corporate into the home. And, she had this moment of, I think her stories that she saw this like someone had drunkenly, I think they must have lived in an area maybe where there were parties, left a jacket the on the lawn of their house. She went out of town for a work trip and was kind of wondering how many days it would take anyone else in her house to notice and deal with this jacket. And she came back and it was still there.
Yeah,
And it was
that resonated with me so much.
yeah, right. Like, why is this my job? Why am I the default on all tasks? And so the fair play system is essentially a way of using, they look like playing cards, although they're much prettier than playing cards, but of kind of looking at all the different tasks that are required to run a home and to run a family. And the concept is that each person is going to hold cards. And when you hold a card, you are responsible for conceiving of it, the conception, the plan, figuring out how it's going to get done, and the execution, which is doing it. And your cards are your cards until maybe you have a family meeting and you redeal. So that's the basic premise. And the idea being that overall, I'm generalizing here, women are holding 99% of the cards and men are typically holding very few, and that it encourages men to take more cards and to have a somewhat more equitable division of labor in the home. And big picture wise, if we can get a more equitable division of labor in the home, we can also help support women in the workplace. A great example of a card is like, my husband does the Cub Scouts for our family and the Boy Scouts for the kids that do that. And he knows when the meetings are. He's on the email list. He has to deal with their uniforms. He has to get the badges on, right? Like he does the whole thing. And in him just taking that one card, many, many years ago, he got a lot of awareness of, extracurriculars aren't just taking the kid to the thing. It's taking thing. It's planning what day of the week it is. It's signing them up. It's fielding 102 emails, right?
Right. Thinking, will they have a snack after school before they do the event? Right. All of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you kind of go through each card and you divide it up, and fair play facilitators can either do workshops for groups of people to help educate you on the system, or I'll do couples or even one-on-one coaching around it to help a couple figure out how we're going to do this in our home. And if people are interested, her book, Eve Rodsky's book, is a really good place. It really kind of explains the whole system in a lot of detail.
I'll put that in the show notes. What I want to highlight to the listeners is a couple things you said is one, where they take over the whole card or task. So that looks like when your husband takes over the Cub Scouts, then you aren't following up with him, which can be that, because that then defeats the whole thing. Because, you said that, like, I forget what the percentage is, but like, women take over a whole bunch of the cards and men take a much fewer amount of the cards. Some of that is by choice. Some of that also is just, I know for me in my first marriage, I had a lot of the cards because it was coming from my worthiness, that a good mom, all that messaging again. So it wasn't necessarily my husband's fault. It was more like if I said, do the Cub Scouts, and then he started doing them, and then I get hyper fixated. Is he doing it the right way? And is he like it? And what are they going to think if he's doing it? It's like, that's up to me to do my own work to calm down, let him do him, and sort of get out of that. And what I'm making it mean that I'm, not doing it all, I guess, is back to that perfectionist piece.
I was going to say that's exactly what it circles back to, right? I mean, there's a concept called maternal gatekeeping, which relates to the idea that sometimes as women, again, not out of any malice, like hold on to all the things because we think there's a right way to do it. But then our spouses or our partners or anyone else that's involved kind of doesn't have the opportunity to learn and fail at it and then fix it. So the reality is, again, with the Cub Scouts example, if he misses a meeting, it's on him. And the kids maybe are upset and they're upset at him. And there a part of me that kind of wants to jump in and fix and solve and hold on to it. Yeah, of course that shows up. I'm human, right? But I also know that there's a real importance in kind of allowing that to be a thing that is separate. Because I cannot function holding all the cards. I will burn out and I will be miserable.
Yeah, well, and I also love modeling a non-gendered, 1950s household. Certainly when I have all sons, I'm like, let's just flip out of this. So I guess for listeners listening, I will put the links in the show notes, but one thing I would encourage them to do is just pick something small, maybe the email from your second graders, class, or some, even like a birthday party. Just practice turning something over. And what I want listeners to hear is that it's not just going to be like, okay, there, it's done, perfect, because we've been living in this model where maybe saying to a spouse, can you take over the birthday party? We've been doing it for how many years? We have lots of experience. Them doing it, they might actually just think, okay, I'm going to drive the child, drop them off at the party and come home. And then the kid is, doesn't have the swimsuit that they were supposed to have, and they don't even have a birthday party, that we have to step out in that discomfort, like stay out of it and let them, as you said, like if a kid is complaining about the Cub Scouts, I found that they would sometimes come to me and be like, Dad didn't do this. And I'm like, go talk to Dad. Like it's a sort of redirection and relearning of doing things a new way. And that it's not going to be done your way. And maybe we can get out of our head that our way is the best way. Or even if it is, maybe there's another way. It's like, okay.
And I think, and especially because you can use the system even if you don't have kids, right? Just around work. But if you do
that's
have
a great point.
It's so nice to watch that relationship that forms between your kids and your spouse too, when you allow them in and they're forced to help and figure it out, right? And I think it helps us with self-compassion as well, because this is stuff we're trying to get for ourselves, and so if we can be more compassionate with ourselves, we can also be more compassionate with our spouse, and it is good practice and letting go of control.
And then something you just said made me think again that it's not like it has to be handing the task over completely. Otherwise it shows up in this dynamic of like them doing you a favor, and that leads to resentment and martyrdom and just weird dynamics. So just like them taking it over completely, they're not doing you a favor by doing the Cub Scouts or doing you a favor by taking care of all the bills from now on, or doing you a favor by planning the trip from start to finish. It's like, no, that these were a team, we're playing together.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to know too is that it's not again, if you're doing it kind of true to form the way it's designed, you're also sitting down with all of the cards and agreeing ahead of time on what she calls the minimum standard of care. So you agree as a couple how this thing is going to be done in a way that works for both of you, so that there is a nagging dynamic of, hey, you didn't do it right. And so, with paying the bills, it's whoever's paying the bills, we agree that they're paid on time. We agree that maybe in full, and whether you do it at midnight the night before they're due or 2 weeks ahead of time is your thing, whether you do it electronically or the mail or whatever, right? Or the dishwasher in our house, my husband does the dishwasher, and so I can't step in and rearrange them if I think he's put them in, which I will acknowledge I'm one of those people with the dishwasher, that there's a part of me that would want to, but it's not my job, so I have to let that piece go. We have an agreement of, the dishes get loaded at night and it is run overnight so that there are clean dishes in the morning and it's never put off, right? That's part of how we worked the system.
Yeah. Well, and I just like, because everything you're speaking of, it is sort of stepping out of this perfectionism, letting us be human while also living in like more mindfully and intentionally. So that requires a level of like, well, what do I really need with the dishwasher? You know what? It means a lot to me that we have clean dishes to eat breakfast off of. So whenever he freaking does it, doesn't really matter. Or, as long as it's done by breakfast. Or, what does it mean for someone to take over packing a lunch? Well, I would like them to have, protein, produce, and a snack. Okay, now they get to, if protein for them is always, a bag of almonds and the kids are fine with that, freaking fine. Like just but that mindfulness piece of being aware, again, getting out of that like human robot and lifting up and looking at like what do we want, what's important for us, and how to join everyone in it so that we're not so burnt out, frazzled, and frustrated.
Yeah. And I think that's the point of all this, right? Whether we're talking about fair play or values or whatever is, we don't want to be burnt out and exhausted. And if you try to do everything or you try to be everything to everyone, that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Yes.
This kind of preventative medicine and or kind of rewriting systems that are maybe not working for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate that. And I guess if anyone's thinking like, oh, I'm already too far gone, or that you have given them lots of areas. I mean, I would have them re-listen to this interview because you've given them lots of areas where they could start small. And that's where I see things shift. I mean, I'm always saying small hinges move big doors. And it like really our brain might tell us, oh, it'll never work, or it's too little, or it's too late, or it's too, I've been married to him for 32 years, or whatever our brain is telling us. And the reality is it's not. People can change all the time, and we can change dynamics all the time.
Yeah, completely. And once you start acting in a different way, right, your brain doesn't like cognitive dissonance. It wants to believe and act in the same way. So it is going to shift some of those thoughts and those belief systems to line up with your behaviors if you're kind of holding consistent in those behaviors. So even if this feels like I'm faking that, but you're doing the way,
yeah,
it's going to start shifting into your thoughts and your feelings as well.
for sure. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. And so I guess in that, when you're feeling this cognitive dissonance, or when you're trying to act as if it is it is super helpful to have support. So I just want listeners to be able to find you. I will put links in show notes, but is there anywhere where you hang out? Where should I direct listeners?
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, they can definitely just go to my website, which is www.drannwelsh.com. But I'm on Instagram. It's at dr.welsh.coaching. And I'm also on LinkedIn at Dr. Ann Welsh. So they can catch me in either of those places. And I do one-on-one support. And I'm also launching a big or a small group coaching program in January for working mothers. So if that particular dynamic or it sounds kind of appealing to you, or you are a working mother and you want some extra support, I think that's going to be a lot of fun and a way to connect with other people that really, really get kind of the specific struggles, and then are all championing each other on in the process of kind of battling burnout and feeling more resilient and feeling more connected to themselves.
Oh, and it's so helpful to be in groups like that, because you get out of this feeling like, oh, I'm all alone and everyone else's house looks like this magazine. So I really appreciate that. Is that something that it's going to be a month to month, they can jump in, or
it'll be kind of a closed cohort for 6 months, but I will be starting them somewhat frequently. So if you missed January and you're still like, definitely shoot me a message, and we'll get another one started as soon as it fills up, essentially.
Okay, wonderful. Because I'm not quite sure when this episode's going to air, but I want listeners to have that opportunity if they want it. Okay, well, thank you so much. We have only sort of just chipped the iceberg of your body of work and knowledge and all of that. And so definitely, listeners, go to the show notes, look at, find Dr. Ann Welsh on there, and just bathe in all the awesomeness that she has to offer us, and support, and helping us get out of burnout and perfectionism and that icky feeling that we're not here to live. That's what we're here on the Love Your Life show. We're here to love our life. So she has lots of tools for that. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay.